You're looking for a cutter that actually gets the job done without turning every project into a headache, something that feels solid in the hand, stays reliable day after day, and doesn't drain your wallet for features you'll never use. That's the exact spot most of us land in when we stare at the endless rows of power saws and cutters on a retailer's page, the fear of buying a flashy machine that sounds great on paper but ends up gathering dust in the garage. If you've ever tried a cheap electric cutter only to discover it chokes on a single thick post, or spent an afternoon swapping out batteries on a cordless model, you know the frustration. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Husqvarna Cutbrake Power Cutter/Saw is positioned as a workhorse for anyone who needs to slice through timber, fence posts, or even small tree limbs on a regular basis. It's a 5.0 horsepower 2-cycle engine paired with a 9-inch blade that can cut up to 16 inches deep, and it's marketed as a wet cutting tool, meaning you can run water through the cut to keep dust down. At first glance, that sounds like the sweet spot between raw power and a cleaner work environment. But the real question is whether those specs translate into everyday usability. Let's start with the engine. A 5-horsepower 2-cycle motor packs a punch that most cordless or small electric models simply can't match. In practice, that extra muscle shows up when you're tackling dense hardwood posts or trying to make a clean split on a damp log. The engine spins up quickly, and once you hit the trigger, the blade bites in with minimal stall. For users who cut wood weekly, fence installers, small-scale landscapers, or homeowners who maintain a sizable property, that kind of instant torque cuts down on the number of passes you need to make, which in turn reduces fatigue. The wet cutting feature is a genuine advantage if you're working in an environment where dust is a concern. Running a low-pressure hose alongside the cut not only keeps the saw blade cleaner, it also prevents sawdust from clouding the work area, a real win if you're working in a tight garden or near a finished patio. I've seen people use a simple garden hose sprayer, and the water flow is enough to keep the blade from gumming up. The trade-off, however, is that you have to bring a water source with you, which can be a hassle on remote sites or in colder weather when you don't want to be spraying water around. It's a small inconvenience that pays off if you're already near a water tap or have a portable pump, but it does add a step to the workflow. Now, the blade size. A 9-inch blade may feel modest compared to the massive 12-inch or 14-inch blades you see on larger stationary saws, but the design of this cutter makes up for it in maneuverability. The blade is mounted on a pivoting head that lets you angle the cut, which is useful when you need to trim a post that's already in the ground. The 16-inch depth rating is impressive for a handheld unit. You can cut through a standard 44 post in a single motion, which saves you from having to reposition the tool multiple times. The downside is that you can't take on the widest boards without stepping back and making 2 overlapping cuts, so if you regularly need to slice full-width 26 lumber, you might feel limited. Because it runs on a 2-cycle engine, you'll have to mix gasoline and oil in the right proportion before you fire it up. That's a detail that can catch occasional users off guard. If you're used to filling a gasoline-only tank, the extra step adds a maintenance rhythm that you need to remember. On the plus side, 2-cycle engines are lighter than comparable 4-stroke models, so the overall weight of the cutter stays manageable. It's heavy enough to feel solid, yet light enough to carry up a ladder without a second pair of hands. Noise is another factor. 2-cycle engines are louder than electric or battery-powered units, and you'll want decent ear protection if you're using it for extended periods. The noise level isn't a surprise, but it's something to factor in if you live in a neighborhood with strict noise ordinances. One of the hidden trade-offs comes from the fact that this is a gas-powered tool. You'll need to store fuel safely, keep the carburetor clean, and perform periodic spark plug checks. For a seasoned DIYer or a professional who already has a small garage workshop, those tasks are part of the routine. For a casual homeowner who only needs to cut a few fence posts a year, the extra maintenance can feel like a burden. In that scenario, a battery-operated reciprocating saw might actually end up cheaper in the long run when you factor in the cost of fuel, oil, and occasional tune-ups. Looking at the price point, Husk